Today's topic of my discussion is strategy implementation. Basically, strategy implementation refers to the execution of the plans and the strategy so as to accomplish the long-term goals of the organization. It converts the strategy into the moves and the action of an organization to achieve its objective. Or in other words, I can say the strategy implementation is the last step in strategy formulation procedure, and this is a very important step that without implementing any strategy we cannot reach at a conclusion or at a major decision which we want to take. So to begin with the meaning, strategy implementation is a term used to describe the activities within an organization to manage the execution of a strategy plan. Basically, a strategy plan is a layout or the outlining or a summary of a work which we are going to do, and the strategy implementation is a term which is used to describe the work or activities which we done within the organization to manage or to control the execution of that work which was written on the strategy plan. So strategy implementation is the translation of chosen strategy into the organizational action so as to achieve strategic goals and the objectives. So basic purpose is to achieve strategic goals and objective. And if strategy implementation is accurate, it is very well done, then the objective can be easily achieved. So for strategic implementation, three things are taken into consideration. What is develop, other is utilize, and third is amalgamate. So organizational structure, control system, and the culture to follow strategy that leads to the competitive advantage and a better performance. So only that strategy need to be implemented which help us to gain or which help us to achieve a competitive advantage and help in the better performance of our work. So special value deploying tasks and the roles of employees are also very important if we consider which strategies need to be implemented. And for that, if we properly implemented any strategy, it leads to maximum efficiency, maximum quality, as well as the customer satisfaction. So the organization control system is all depends upon the strategy which we implement. Why? Because it leads, or it without control there is no planning. If we do any plan, we need a control or a supervision or a monitoring for the properly execution of that control system. And the organization control system includes motivational incentives. That is, we need to give some motivation to our employees. If some person is doing good effort, then in that case rewards are given to them in form of bonuses, appreciation, encouragement. Then the feedback is also very important. We can't know without feedback that where we stand and what we need to improve in future. And the last thing is the organization performance. That is also very important term which we use in the organization, because we want to know where our organization stands and where we want to uh, take our organization in future. So it all leads to what values we are going to use, what are our values, how we behave. That is the attitude of every person which is engaged in the work of our organization, as well as what are the norms and the beliefs which was followed by our organization. That is what is a code of conduct, how well the people in the organization can coordinately work. And then if any strategy is excellently formulated, then it includes the proper organization structure, a proper reward structure, as well as a proper resource allocation process. That organization know which is the important resource and where to allocate them in order to utilize it properly. Now, basically, a strategy implementation poses a threat to many managers and employees in an organization. Why? Because sometimes the strategy cannot be properly implemented and it was treated as a threat to even a manager as well as the employees who was engaged in that strategy. So new power relationships are predicted and achieved. Some people are fired and some are hired, and new groups, whether they are formal or informal, are formed whose values, whose attitudes, whose beliefs and the concerns may or may not be known. So with a change in a power and a status role, the manager and the employee may confrontation behavior. They had a confrontation behavior. There are some types of confrontation between managers and the employee regarding to their role, regarding to their status, their power conditions. All these needs to be considered while formulating any strategy in the organization. Now, without, if we don't able to do strategy planning, then strategy implementation is not possible. So basically, what is strategy planning? That where to do, when to do, how to do, and what are the effective method by using which we are going to achieve that thing. So what to do overall is a strategy planning. And if I'm talking about strategy implementation, that is how to do it. That is our day-to-day operation, that which work is to be done in what day or in which day, that is considered in the strategy implementation, that how we divided our work into the day-to-day operations. Now here is the strategy implementation process, starting with a vision. Vision means where we are and where we need to go. That is a vision. According to that vision, we formulate a strategy. The strategy can be formulated. Then what is the implementation plan? That how we want to implement that strategy, how we want to achieve that vision which we see, that where we want to go in the future. Then that implementation plan includes accountabilities. Accountabilities means the responsibilities, major responsibilities, which work is to be done by whom. And there should be a deadlines. Without deadlines, no work was complete on time. So deadline is important. And then is a ownership, that which work was given to which person. And all these things are confirmed by a monitoring system, that there was a proper control system in the organization who monitor all the activities in the organization. And again, that monitoring system is adjust according to the strategy which we want to achieve. So this is a strategy implementation process. Now, there was relationship between strategy formulation and strategy implementation. So what was that? The strategy formulation and the strategy implementation are different, and it needs to be sound and excellent, both the things. Whether we are talking about formulation or implementation, they needs to be sound and excellent. A strategy fail because of implementation, not because of the strategy models. Sometimes we make a superb strategy, there was no flaws in the strategy which we made, but the strategy fails because it was not properly implemented. The matrix show the various combination of a strategy formulation and implementation. Here is a matrix. Uh, so starting with this matrix, the matrix was divided into two categories. On the one side, there is operation management, and on the other side, there is a strategy management. And both these things are confirmed by efficient and inefficient. And here also it is efficient and effective and ineffective. Now, in the cell, number first is organization thrives. Since it is achieving what it aspires to achieve with efficient output and input ratio. Thrive means what we need to achieve, what we inspire to achieve. Where in cell 2 and the cell 4, organization is doomed unless it can establish a strategic direction. Now, if I'm talking about strive, here the operation management is very efficient and strategy management is effective. So this is a best position, that here the organization aspire, that is it is efficient output and input ratio. On the other hand, if I'm talking about number 2 and number 4, that is die slowly or die quickly. Why this matrix considered die word? That is, here the operation management is efficient, but the strategy implementation or the strategy management is ineffective. So here what we do can survive for very less time. So die slowly, where the operation management is efficient but strategy management is not so effective. And on the other hand, the fourth matrix is the die quickly, where both the things are inefficient. Here it only survives until unless it establishes a proper strategic direction. And if I'm talking about the third cell, that is a survive, the strategic direction is present to ensure effectiveness, even if rather too much input is being used to generate the output. Thus, the effective is to survive where efficiency is not sufficient for the survival. So, operation management is inefficient in the survive mode, but the strategies are efficient. So, here, so this is what the relationship between strategy formulation and implementation, which we formed the superb strategy, but if it is not implemented well on proper time, then it is of no use. Now, issues in strategy implementation, starting with Implementation task test strategist ability to allocate resources. Of course, this is but natural that the implementation is the process in which a person's ability to allocate the resource can be judged. Its design structure, its formulate, how the person formulates the functional policies, identifies the leadership style, all these things are tested in the implementation stage. Strategies leads to a plan, and the plan result in a different kind of program which includes goals, their policies, the procedure, rules, and the steps to be taken in putting them into the action. So basically what we implemented, that is a strategy, and that is a plan of organization. And the plan result in a different kind of programs, their goals, procedure, rules, and which we want to implement. The program lead to the formulation of project, which is the time schedule and the cost of a predetermined. It required allocation of fund based on the capital budgeting of the organization. So all the allocation of funds and all the formulation of policies, what was the time schedule, their cost, all are allocated according to the capital budget of the organization. Budgeting is also very important and consideration while formulating any strategy. So the project create needs for infrastructure for day-to-day operation in organization. Resource allocation is a key to successful project. If you are not properly allocating the resources, then that project is not going to work. So sequence in which a strategy implementation issues are to be considered. So these all issues need to be considered very carefully. So starting with the project implementation, the how well the project is implemented. Then the second thing is procedural implementation, how well the procedure was implemented. Procedure leads to methods or a way of doing work, how well that method works. Then third is a resource allocation, how well the resources are allocated to the different person or to the different departments in the organization. Then structural implementation, how the structure work in the organization. Then is a functional implementation, how well the functional department work. If I'm talking about sales, production, these all are the functional areas of any organization, how well the rules or the strategy was implemented there. Then is a behavior implications. Behavior implications means how well the person reacts to that particular strategy, how efficiently the person going to work on that strategy. So all these issues, all these 6 points need to be considered while making any strategy implementation. So the transition from strategy formulation to strategy implementation required a shift in responsibilities from strategies to divisional and the functional manager, and their roles involvement should be maximum during the strategy formulation. So at the stage where the strategy is formulated, the role should be a maximum. So manager roles, how the work was done, what was the deadlines, how this work is going to do in the future, what was the result, what was the uncertainties, all these things need to be considered, and here the role of a manager or their involvement is maximum. Now there is a resource allocation. Now what is that? In strategic planning, resource allocation is a plan for using available resources. That is how much resources we have and how we are going to use that resources in order to achieve our objective. That is a resource allocation. Basically, it is a process of allocate a scarce resource among the various projects of a business. We know that we don't have unlimited resources. There is a scarcity of a resources which we have in our organization. So resource allocation is the process that we work with that limited resources in our business unit. So there may be a contingency mechanism. So what was that? That is a priority ranking of items should be included. Now we have scarce resources. We need to prioritize that item. So where which thing is important, that is allocated in that department. Which item to fund if more resource should be available. Priority ranking of some items and sacrifice total fund must be reduced. And which is the most important item in that list and which was the least important item, these need to be prioritized while allocating any resources. There are a number of approaches to solve the resource allocation problem. The very first is manual approach, that we do all the things by manually. Then is the algorithm approach. It was done by drawing charts or a algorithm and the flow charts. Then is a combination of both. We can use manual as well as algorithm approach also while doing the resource allocation. Now, procedural issues in strategy implementation. The following procedure laid down for the implementation constitutes an important component of the strategy implementation in the Indian context. One is a licensing procedure. Then is foreign collaboration procedure, FARA requirements, MRTP, capital issues control requirement, export requirements, incentive and facilities. All these are the things which we need to consider while we are going to implement any strategy. So while licensing procedure, that is registration, licensing of industrial undertaking, their rules, and it was necessary. Licensing is necessary for establishing any new manufacturing, any if we want to produce or manufacture a new product, we need license. If we want to expand our business, we need license. If we want to change the location, we need license. So licensing procedure is very important. So here the person needs to approach to for industrial approvals, the project appraisal board application, the number of government agencies, ministries, then after conditions are fulfilled by the organization, the letter of intent is converted into the industrial licenses. Then is a foreign collaboration procedure. Here, the areas should be prioritized. Which technology needs to be export? What was the percentage of equity holdings? What was the limit we need to raise? All the proposals to set up the project with the foreign collaborations. These all needs a government approval, and we need to consider while formulating any strategy. Then is MRTP requirements. These are to prevent monopolistic and restrictive trade practices and the concentration of economic power in the few hands. So there also needs some percentage which was required to be approved from the central government. Then is a capital issue control requirement. Capital issue control requirement issues by the company regulated through a Capital Issues Control Act 1956. And for the purpose of a strategy implementation, these acts are relevant so far as the provision of a financial resources is concerned. Apart from these acts, also affect mergers and amalgamations, and they regulate the capital reorganization for plans for merger and acquisition if our organization is not working in well condition. Then is export import requirements. The import trade control policy book is an annual government publications in which all the rules and regulations are there. And through the import control order, the government has to delegate the power to issue license to administer the act of the chief control who control all the export import system. And the benefit from incentive and facilities for project implementation, for putting various strategies into actions. These consider incentives, subsidies, any facility which was provided by the government for controlling, for promotional rules. All these things need to be considered while implementing any strategy. So all these things we must take into consideration if we want to implement or any strategy in an effective way in order to get a best results or a desired results. So thank you. That's it for the today's discussion. Hope you like this lecture.